Welcome to the True Wellness Podcast with Dr. Z, where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. Z, and each week I will bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Be sure to check the show notes and grab your copy of the True Wellness Checklist so you can get started on your journey right away. Now, let's get started. Okay, so most people think that mental health starts in the mind, but what if it actually starts in the body? In the signals that we ignore, the boundaries that we override, the values that we betray every day. Today's conversation is really about what happens when self-awareness, values, and action finally all line up, and why that alignment actually changes everything. So I'm sitting down with Danielle Zilg. Yes, another Danielle Z, coach, motivator, future marriage, family therapist. And she helps people really reconnect with themselves before life forces them to have to do that.
Thank you so much, Danielle. What a lovely introduction. I'm so honored to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I want to walk through, because I know, Danielle, you focus heavily on the mind-body connection in your work, teaching people how to listen to their bodies, how to understand their internal signals, and how to stop living like disconnected from themselves. And I know, like, it's not about fixing what's wrong. It's really about remembering what's already inside of you.
Absolutely.
So
And I love that you said that. Yeah, you're not nobody. I always say to everybody, you're not broken. None of us. We're not broken. Like, even if that's the narrative you're telling yourself, you're not. You just, you just need to listen to yourself a little bit more. But as you were going on, I didn't want to cut you off. I apologize, but I just wanted to validate that for everybody listening.
absolutely. So tell me a little bit, like, was there a moment in your own life where you realized that alignment, not effort, right, was actually the missing piece?
Oh yeah, I could say it's like kind of like the origin story of my business, right? I
Right.
previously to this career worked in corporate America, worked in marketing,
Mhm.
typical climbing the ladder, just doing the thing, got, looked successful on the outside, but on the inside I was hollow. I just felt like I was like I enjoyed it, but I was just like it wasn't lighting me up. I would wake up like not dreading the day, but just like, like, all right, like it's just another day, just checking off the box. And it actually took, unfortunately for me, um, I pushed until my body physically told me no. Because I
Right.
was my body was giving me all the signs, right? Anxiety, not, sleep disruption, was just like, oh, I just pushed through it. And then it took actually like, I actually had to go on disability at the job that I was working at, because it got to the point where I was having like a depressive mental episode, and I checked
Right.
myself into a intensive outpatient program. He did my healing work, and of course, I would say my whole adult life, I've struggled with anxiety, so I've been very in touch with the mental health industry and my own mental health and my own healing. But that was that big pivotal moment that I was like, if you don't listen to your body will tell you what to do. And that was a very
Yes.
powerful moment for me. And when I decided to really look in and transform my life, because I couldn't live that way. Like I couldn't live that way
Right.
anymore.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, first of all, Danielle, thank you for your vulnerability, because
Oh, of course.
I in my work, I see so often, women come in and they are, they have these really high expectations of
Mm.
themselves. People have high expectations of them, and they are disconnected, right? And they are in this space where, like, hey, life is not fun anymore. Like,
Mhm.
where's the there's no more joy. Like, what am I really getting up for? And then there are physical manifestations, like in my practice, in my side, I see the physical manifestations that show up as a result of living in this space. I'm going to call it an incoherent space, right? Where we're not aligned with who we truly are. And I think, I love what you said in that you were like, hey, I had to stop and I had to take care of myself and I had to do something different, because a lot of times I find that many women they'll just keep pushing, right? They'll just keep pretending like, okay, if I just get through this month, if I just get through this week, if I just get through this year, oh, okay, once the financial pressure's gone, once this is gone, once that's done, like everything will all be okay. But they never come back into that present moment.
Yeah.
But you found a way to do that, to reconnect with yourself. How did you do that? Or how do you recommend that people do that?
Well, I love that you brought up too that, like, it did take a pause. I mean, for everybody, I get it too. I live a life. I'm an adult. I was lucky enough that I had to take that pause. Like, life forced me to take that pause, because I understand everybody has, many responsibilities. And you said, especially women, we have a lot of things going on. Maybe we're mothers, we have homes, we are adults, we have bills. I get it. Like, it is a very, some people don't have that luxury. I know that for me, it was like a privilege. I was able to pause, but I say you can pause in micro moments in your life without having to take like a, sabbatical or a break, or, and I always say, like, for me, honestly, what got me through everything was finding my purpose and leading with my values. I know you mentioned and when you were introducing me, like, I'm a big values person, and I think when you're in misalignment, whether it be career wise, relationships, whatever, if you just find out what, like, sit with yourself, take it maybe, I don't know, half an hour a day, however long it takes you. I'm not going to tell you how long, because and that's the work that I do with my clients. I say, you have to figure this out. I'm not going to give you, like, you need to know your core values in a week.
Yes.
Give them time. But if you know and define your core values, and then you shape your life around those core values, you'll feel that stress and that tension and that just drop away, because you're living in alignment. You are and it could be as simple as like, I'll say, like, my core values are accountability, authenticity. I mean, they're a little bit, I have sentences, but in general, accountability, authenticity, compassion, empathy, and accountability. So everything I do in my life, if it's business related, personal, I try to tie it back to one of those core values. And just that feeling of, like, that foundational, like, very grounded feeling keeps me, like, going when days are a little, because we're human. I'm going to have a stressful day.
Yeah,
so I think that
course.
for me was a very pivotal moment. And I try to live my life that way, for forever. I'm going to continue. So I think having a very strong set of core values helps you in moments when you are on that, like, hamster wheel. You're go, go, go. It's like, take a moment, define them, and move on from there. But it's also too a process.
Yeah, but that's really powerful, because it's almost like, if we don't take the time to, and I think we all might say, oh, I live by my values, I have values, but have you ever, like, sat down to really hone in on what are those values and what they mean for you? Because I think when you do that, right, it now becomes your compass.
Exactly.
So you can say, okay, well, doing this, does it actually serve my fundamental values and my purpose? And then it, choices and decisions, I think, become easier, because it's either like yes or no, like it does or it doesn't. Does it pass the litmus test, so to speak? And it sounds like that's what you began to define for yourself. And I know that's what you help clients with when they're dealing with anxiety and burnout and relationship struggles.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing up relationships, because I will say that is the one area, of course, I revamped my whole life based off of my, that one experience. I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. That was just my journey and my, that like in my life. Like I'm not wishing that upon anybody. But yeah, hey, we all in this life for different reasons. But I love that you mentioned relationships, because and I was going to bring up this example of like how, so I live my life with the core values I just listed. I know if somebody is like irritating me, or if I'm having a conversation with them, that they're crossing a boundary or something, if one of my core value, if they don't hold the same core value as me. And then I'm not
Yeah.
saying I'm going to cut that person off like immediately, if like maybe like, because I'm open, like minded, like I can have a conversation with somebody that maybe doesn't like, or maybe isn't as compassionate and empathetic as me, and doesn't get why I want to be a mental health professional. Like I can have a conversation with you, but if I see it
Yeah.
as a pattern, a repeating pattern, and then I'm like, okay, like if it's like a one-off behavior, cool, you maybe didn't align to my value, fine. But when it becomes a pattern, then I'm like, maybe this is part of this person's character, and then I'm like,
Right.
because you don't align with my values, I have to then make a decision on said relationship, whether I keep it,
Right.
or, whether I just keep that person at arm's length, or, just end the relationship, but that's just an example of living in your values.
Yeah, that's true. I think that that's a hard one for people, right? Especially, so, you know, I work with a lot of women, and women often feel this responsibility to, their friends, their family, like they've got to take care of everybody. I have I have a client who's going through something right now with her sister, and it's, her sister only wants to talk to her if she's going to send her sister money. And I'm like, wow, like that is
Mm,
like, what is the value there? And of course you love your family
of
member,
course,
right? You love
absolutely.
your sister, and to be out of communication with her, right, which we is also can be a manipulative strategy, right, that someone else takes on. It's hard. So how do you help people reconcile that? Because we all know we can't control other people. So
No.
how do we bring ourselves to that point in our relationship with them where we can be like, okay, well, if this is the way it has to be, then this is the way it has to be. Like I need to now fulfill on my life and take care of myself.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say a word, but I'm also going to explain it, because I'm sure your listeners and every woman has heard this.
Yes.
Boundaries. Boundaries
Yeah.
are like boundaries. But actually, I had somebody on my these two women on my podcast, Jen and Jillian, and they're actually like, they have a book about boundaries that I read, and I loved it
Love
because
it.
and I'm taught as a mental health like boundaries are like, like obviously we set up, I'll use the metaphor of like a fence around a house, right? Like you're the house, and
Mhm.
you kind of put that fence up to safeguard yourself and your emotions, or your whatever, um
Right.
your feelings, to make sure you're protected, and that's like okay. But what I loved about this book that Jen and Jillian wrote is that make boundaries more of like especially in relationships, like with your client, with her sister, make it more of like a we thing versus like a me thing. So I think when we think of boundaries, it's like, all right, my boundary is like, I'm just using this as like a very extreme example, but like, I'm going to block you like from calling. Cause like when you call me and you communicate with me, you activate me. It's like, no, like sit down. And if you're able to have a conversation with the person, say, how can we work together to form a healthy boundary within
Yes.
this relationship, so we both benefit. But it also too, I'll tie it back to it, your boundaries are also tied to your values. So it's like, well, like in an ideal world like that, but I understand like the world is messy, and it's unideal, and it's all very situational depending on the dynamics of your relationships. But I like to think of
Right.
boundaries, and like their book taught me a lot about how making it more of like a shared experience versus just like pushing people away, you know?
Right. 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 Yeah. And I think so the boundaries I also think are they're not just external, but they're also internal. Like
Correct.
setting the line of like, okay,
Yes.
what am I willing to tolerate? And at what point do I just need to disconnect? right? Like how far is it okay for me to go in this relationship, right? Without, to the point where it's not going to sacrifice who I am and my
Exactly.
health and my well-being. And so I think those boundaries, they operate in many, many different ways for sure.
And I will say, you just like, I love what you just said too, and it reminded me, and I'll share that, like, I think doing a lot of self work is really important also when defining your core values. I mean, you can't really, they are hand in hand. You can't you can't like they go hand in hand. But because what you were saying remind me is like of self-abandoning, and that's my tell a lot with certain things in my life. When I feel that like this isn't true to me, this isn't true to Danielle and myself, that's when I'm like, this isn't for me. So once you start sacrificing your sense of self for something, that cost is too high. And that's just, I guess, the advice I give to your listeners, like, because it's easy to do. Like, I mean, I'll be honest, like, I mean, of course, moments of like sacrifice is part of life. Like, I mean, I
Right.
had to work on and even with working with my clients, yes, sometimes maybe I'll test my boundaries a little bit and be not as rigid. But if you do that as a pattern, unfortunately, you will pay a cost, and the cost will be
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes. Tell, I know that you talk a lot about self-awareness,
mm.
and, you know, what do most people think self-awareness actually is, and what is it really?
Oh gosh, I mean, but that's a really, really, really good question. Like that. So, I think a lot of people, and you're talking to like, somebody. I actually was thinking about this in class last night. Because I'm going back to school for my marriage and family therapy degree. And I was like, what actually thought, like, sat in my class and we were talking about self and all this stuff. And I was like, what a privilege is it for me to be sitting in a room with like all like these 8 other people, and we're talking about sense of self, the parts of ourself for like hours. I'm like, this is such
Right.
like a beautiful thing, which I will say a lot of people don't know. I think the misconception with self-awareness is that perception is reality. And I think a lot of people think self-awareness is what other people perceive of them, but it
Right.
actually isn't. It's your ability to know yourself, know your inner world, do the inner work, know your emotional reactions, know, like, of course, I always say this: you can't like know how to process an emotion you haven't felt. So I'm not gonna sit here and say, but like, we have a range of emotions, and like, it's truly like self-awareness to me is just really, really knowing yourself and living a self-examined life, and like treating yourself as like a project, like that you just want to keep discovering layers of. But I think the
Yes.
misconception is like, yeah, it's just what people see and what they think of me and how they perceive me. And I'm like, no, that's their perception of you, but that's not. I actually, I'll share. I have a tattoo on my arm, and I got it because it was fitting, and I think you'll like it. And I'm reading it now. It's that your perception of me is a reflection of you, and my reaction to you is an awareness of me.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
yeah, self-awareness to me is like the inner, knowing your inner world.
Yeah. I love that. And one of the thing I'm thinking here too, that's really important for people to get and to understand and to bring into this conversation is real honesty with ourselves. I
Yes.
know that there's, I think back to times in my life when I've had different struggles because, like you said, life's, right? And a lot of times I feel like we get trapped into this perception of ourselves that maybe isn't even honest, right? We're like, oh, I'm trying everything I can, but are we really,
Mm,
right? Or have we stuck ourselves into a
mhm.
specific box? And I think a lot of times when we're in that stuck space in life, it is because we've got this container now that we've put ourselves into, and we don't know how to like break free. So how can we, how can we get to that space of vulnerability with ourselves? I know for me, I'm always like, all right, Danielle, let's okay, let's be honest with yourself. If you were really honest with yourself,
Yes.
what would you say to yourself, right?
Yeah, no, and I love that you asked that question. And I'm not like forcing, because of my first instinct, and this is just the mental health professional in me. I'm like,
Yeah.
go to therapy, but I'm like, I don't like, and also too, I want to say, like, as a coach, like everybody's cup of tea. But I will say, there's one model of therapy that really has changed my life, and it's called internal family systems. And it's not like you have to like, but it's just a thought. It's just more of like a thought process or a concept that I would like to share with your listeners. It's looking at yourself like a system. So it's, you have your core self, and then you have parts of yourself. So I think
Yes.
just even differentiating your core self, like in your core self, there's 8 C's, and forgive me, I forget them all, but it's like when you're calm, connected, curious, like when you feel like, when you just know when you feel like your own, you feel good in your own skin, you're enjoying life, like that's your core self. And then anything that might come up, like let's say, maybe you know, you get irritated, and or maybe you struggle with anxiety or anything, those are just parts of you. They're not just so detaching that, like moments where, like, like where, like, just like, I don't know, like just certain or habits or emotions or things that come up or roles, detaching them from your core self, I think is helpful.
Yes.
Moments like you were
Yes.
saying. Yeah. And yeah, and it takes
I love
a level of honesty. I mean, you're right. Like, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, and be like, is this, because and I'll just share this, and because honestly, I struggle with this question, and I'm actually, it's like, I'm thinking about what my answer is, but like, strip away everything. Like, if you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, all right, I'm Danielle, or both of us are like, I'm Danielle, and then like, try to describe yourself without your occupation, a role, like, and strip that away, and that's who you are. Like, all those other things are just parts. And
yes.
it's a hard exercise. I mean, I will be honest with you, like, I'm
Yeah.
working on it. Like, that's something I like, strip away where you live, strip away, yeah, any title that you have, strip away family, strip away, like, who are you? That,
Yes.
and like,
Yeah.
have that honest conversation.
Yeah. In I'm a neurolinguistic practitioner,
Yeah.
right? And so one of the things that we often talk about, and one of the things that you can, so easily distinguish, is think about all the times that we say, well, there's a part of me that wants to do this, but then there's another part of me that wants to do that. And so you can already hear, like, we become these different parts and pieces, and getting to the core and even integrating those parts and pieces, I think, is really critical for our journey to healing and wellness and good mental health and self-awareness, all the things that we've been speaking about today.
Yeah, and I will share too with everybody that, like, I struggled, I will say, most of my adult life with like anxiety. I mean, not like crazy, but like, I would, in very, very stressful moments, I've had my moments of panic attacks. And until doing, like, thinking of myself, like, I always thought my anxiety was actually like part, like my, like Danielle, and it took me parts work to be like, no, Danielle, anxiety is just a part of you. I detached it from
Mhm.
myself. Like, of
Yeah.
course, it's a process. It didn't happen in a day and then I was cured. But and then I now, knowing IFS and learning more about it, like, that's one of my managers. It's protective. So I
Yeah.
get anxious when, if I feel like I'm in danger in any way, or even when my nervous system is just activated, I'll get a little anxious. But now, but when that happens, even we were just talking about, even if I get an email or a text and I'm like, ooh, like, my fight or flight kind of gets a little activated. Like, I tell myself, I'm like, Danielle, that is your anxiety part. Like, it's okay.
Yes.
Like, recognize it. I see you. Like, you're here for a purpose. You're trying to protect me. I get it. And I'm not saying like, like I don't like, in like a minute it's gone, but it helps me detach from, like, that is just a part of that is not who I am. And it's just an experience that I'm having versus like, I think we tie a lot, unfortunately. And I'll say this too, we tie a lot to our identities without even thinking about it. So like when we
Oh,
use,
yeah.
like, I'll be like, I am anxious versus I feel anxious. I always say to with
Yeah.
people feeling words, try as much
Mhm.
as you can to be like, I feel like said feeling versus like, I am sad. Because like I am Danielle. I am not sad. Like you are,
Right.
so it's those little nuances are minor, but they're so impactful.
Yes. Yeah, they are. And it is the language that we use, right? With ourselves, in our heads, out in the
Oh,
world. It really makes a difference. It's
absolutely.
always like too when people are like, oh, I should be exercising more. I'm like, you should? Says who? Says what? Why? Or I can't, like, if we're making dietary changes, I can't have this. I was like, well, wait a second, you
Like, who's
can
telling you?
have it.
Who's asking you? Yeah, who's saying that?
Yeah, you can choose not to. That's very different, right? The energy around I can't have it and I choose not to have it. Whoa, completely different. One, you are disempowered, and the other one, you are empowered. So the question is, how do we start to take that self-talk, like take it out from back here, bring it to the forefront, and start to identify, am I empowering or disempowering myself?
Yeah, and I think that's like when you brought like fully going full circle with the conversation, like that is self-awareness, like knowing like, and of course, as you know, as I know, unfortunately, our brains are wired to go to the negative first. So that's our default setting. It's like, and it's not a bad thing. It's just that's what we need to survive. So like so that's why I think just being very intentional is also
Mhm.
super important with especially language. And I love that you brought up self-talk because we all have an inner critic. And unfortunately, sometimes I think they are the very strong voice in our heads. And if you are able to stop that, and that's why I think, things like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy are so, I'm so sorry, oh my gosh, are so important. Because I apologize. Oh my gosh, that was so
I'm
embarrassing.
just going to have you stop. So
I
just
sincerely
stop
apologize.
for 1 second. No, that's okay. So we just need to go back to whatever it is that you were saying before the phone went off so that we can edit it out. And I'm trying to remember, like, kind of what you were saying.
I was
Um,
saying about self-talk and about cognitive behavioral therapy and like
okay, so let's just
okay.
start there, because we'll cut and
All right.
and
Oh, thank
paste.
you. I'm
Okay,
so sorry though. My phone was
that's
on do
okay.
not disturb, and I'm like, ugh, Mac
You're
problem.
good.
All right. So
Okay, go ahead.
go. Okay. So I think it's really important to recognize the self-talk. And that's why I think therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, where they teach like I am statements, I statements, feel statements. And as I said, like words matter. Most words matter in every aspect of life, but to yourself a lot. And as we were talking about, this brings it full circle of self-awareness, of knowing this about yourself, and maybe
Yes.
catching yourself and being like, hey Danielle, like I this just happens to me a lot, like, hey Danielle, you're being a little hard on yourself right now, like be
Yes.
kinder to yourself, like you're human, you know.
Yeah. Yes. It's one of those things too. Like, I always encourage people, like, when you wake up in the morning, like, before you let your mind, before you touch your phone, before do anything else, like, just, curl up in that fetal position, give yourself a hug, and be
Yeah.
like, hey, I love you. What do you need
Yes.
today? And
Yes.
then just listen, right? Because the gremlins, oh gosh, the gremlins can get bad. But if we're already setting ourselves up in a space at the beginning of the day for empowerment, right? We're saying, hey,
Yeah.
I love you. Hey, self, I love you unconditionally, no
Yeah.
matter what, right? It grounds you in a brand new space to stay for that entire day, you
Yeah.
know?
And I will share too, something that is not mine. She is like the pie. I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard of her, Dr. Kristin Neff. She is like the pioneer of self compassion. She has a like she call it a self compassion institute, and it's all about what we are talking about, like leading with self kindness and not self
Yes.
judgment. Like,
Yeah.
like like she always says, the famous thing she always says too, like talk to yourself like you would your like best friend or your mom
Yeah.
or your family or your son or your daughter. Like talk to yourself like you would a friend. Like would you be like
Yeah.
to yourself like you're not doing enough? Like no, you know what I mean? Like would you tell a friend like that's not good enough? You know what I mean? Like no, you wouldn't say that to them, you know?
Right. Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think this has been really awesome, Danielle. Tell me a little bit, if what's 1 to 3 things that our listeners can begin to implement from this conversation that will help to transform their lives in new ways?
Oh boy, 1 to 3 things. Oh boy. Well, the first one I will say, I always, this is like my go to, is the language piece we were talking about. Be
Yeah.
hyper aware of the I am statements versus I feel statements versus I choose versus that, and how you talk to yourself. And when you're having that internal dialogue with your head, because it could get down a rabbit, you could spiral, pretty easily. So just
Sure.
very, very, very like aware of how you talk to yourself. And I will say, make time. And I'm not saying like you have to do what I did and pause for, but make time, carve out time for yourself to sit and just like think about your experiences, your feelings at the end of your day. Or maybe it's like in the beginning of the day is great, but maybe like at the end of the day, reflect on, be like, okay, like what happened today? That, or maybe that person made me feel angry. Like maybe let's just sit with it for a little bit, I would say. And that's maybe my third thing I will say. When you are having a feeling, feelings are information, they are signals, and they are there to help you. And just sit and listen to your body and sit with your feelings, because we're all only human. We are going to have many feelings a day. So if you're able to, I understand life's too, but like take a minute to sit with whatever feeling you're feeling and really be present in your body.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Danielle, tell us a little bit about how people can find you and where they can find more information about you and the wonderful work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much. So yes, the best way to reach me is my website, daniellezmft.com. And I would say I'm most active on Instagram. It's danielle.z.mft on Instagram, but I'm on all the things. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, but yeah, so you'll find me anywhere, and it's all Danielle ZMFT.
All right. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Z reminding you to tune into your body, connect with what matters, and embrace your journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Be sure to grab a copy of the True Wellness Checklist right in the show notes. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you for the next episode.